Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming. So yeah, my name is Lucia Nicastro, and I'm here today to present, Coventry's food system. So Coventry City Region case study, Mapping of Coventry's foodscape as a site of agroecological transition. And if that sounds like a mouthful, we're going to break this down step by step, So yeah, I'm just going to get into it. So the overview of this presentation is I'm going to talk a little bit about me, then I'm going to talk about a little bit about the ATTR research project, which is how I am here before you today. And then we're going to do kind of the meat of the presentation, which is 2 exercises where we're going to kind of discuss the Coventry food system and where we think it's at, like as a community, as a collective. And then after that, we're going to do some Q&A at the end. So I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the place. So I think it's really interesting that this region is kind of a mix of, obviously English names, right? But also like Native American names. Like the name Massachusetts is actually after the Massachusetts tribe, and it means at the Great Hill. And this is actually the hill that the tribe is named after. So now it's called the Blue Hill Reservation, and this is just Massachusetts in fall. We have beautiful fall colors, and we really take our fall very seriously with pumpkins and Halloween and all that. So just a little bit of the context of where I came from. So yeah, you may not suspect this, but my first job was actually as a professional balloon artist. Not many people know that about me. So if you ever need help with a party. So it actually took me a while to get interested in agriculture. Like I said, I'm from a big city. So the way it happened is after my balloon artist job, I did an internship with the U.S. National Archives in Washington, D.C., where I got to see how a lot of different federal agencies work, including the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And because my cousin worked for them at the time. So she gave me a tour of the building, and I was like, well, they have really cute paintings of cows on the wall, so obviously I want to work here. So that is what originally got me interested in it. But I decided to really pursue it more when I did my bachelor's degree. So I got a bachelor's in, I did my own bachelor's degree. So I designed it myself, and I did it in agricultural business. And as part of that, I did a study abroad in Italy. So this is actually me in Italy in, I believe, 2019. Where I started learning about organic agriculture and actually getting my hands dirty, because even though doing that internship, I knew that I kind of wanted to do something. I wanted to make my career around helping the community instead of necessarily being a private practice farmer myself. I really wanted to get my hands dirty, which is why I was I want to do a degree in agriculture, get as much experience on farms as possible. So this is actually me at the UMass Student Farm. I went to the University of Massachusetts Amherst, which is in the western part of Massachusetts, so it was in 2020, so we did it at the height of the pandemic, which is why we're all in masks, but I had some really wonderful experiences there. Oh, it's very sensitive. So yeah, after that, I did my master's degree in gastronomic sciences, because I thought, what's a good way that I can help, farmers and help them sell what they need to sell. I thought that, learning a bit more about gastronomy could maybe kind of give me a more holistic idea of the food system. So I have this picture because actually part of your training is they make you taste rancid olive oil to understand what it is. So you do a little bit of a lot of different disciplines, which is why, when people ask me oh, what'd you get your master's degree in? Even though technically I got a degree in gastronomy, I tend to say more food anthropology, because it's not, you do have some cooking classes, but you're definitely not in there every day. So it's really more about learning a little bit about a lot of different facets of the food system. So, and I think that relates a lot to agroecology. I think agroecology is interdisciplinary like by default. So I think it really prepared me for my current position. Probably should have prefaced with that. I'm a research assistant at, I want to say with an Italian accent because I don't know how to say it with an English one, CAWR. So my master's degree, I got it in Italy because after that semester abroad in Italy, I was like, I'm moving. I'm never coming back to the United States again. I'm moving my whole life over to Europe, and that's what I did. So I got my master's degree here in Piemonte, and then I actually moved completely to the opposite side to Puglia, where I got the research position that I have today. So CAWR is a nonprofit, but it's also the Agronomic Institute of Bari. So Bari is the capital of the Puglia region in Italy. And I've been there, I've had this position for about a year, and I've been in Italy for about 2.5 years. So the first research project that I work on is called Organic Targets. It's about a community of farmers that in Ostuni that are going from conventional to organic agriculture, and they're trying to revitalize this medieval garden system that's been there forever. So I get to work with this lovely community, and because I speak enough Italian, basically transmitting their words into English, which honestly, that's kind of what I've wanted to do from the get-go, is to actually find a way to give a megaphone to communities. And then I have grass sealing, which is the same thing, except it's with gender in agriculture instead. Apologize for the grainy photo. So I get to work with a community of women entrepreneurs in Puglia and, listen to their struggles and actually give form to that. So now, I wanted to give a quick plug before I get to the third project, the ATTR project. Just for my friend, she's doing a research project with VR in cars. So if you're interested in being a participant, apparently you get a £10 Amazon voucher, and you just go to the National Transport Design Center and they put VR and you're just there for 45 minutes. And then, so if you're interested, feel free to send me an email after the presentation and I'll forward you along. But yes, that brings me to my final research project that I'm involved with, the ATTR project, aka the Agroecological Transitions for Territorial Food Systems. So I'm assuming most of you know what agroecology is already, so I'm not really gonna go into an in-depth description of it, but basically ATTR is a project that's meant to promote agroecology. So again, the interdisciplinariness, and the whole point is that you have different nodes, aka case studies, and you go between these case studies and share your knowledge with each other. So it mostly focuses on action research, and if you're doing one, by the way, if you are core staff or PhD students, you can do these staff exchanges, or they're called secondments as part of the project. So feel free to send me an email if you have any questions on that as well. So yeah, there are 16 territorial case studies, and this is a map of all of them. So it's Italy, France, the UK, the US, and Brazil. So this is my first secondment in Coventry, but I'm also going to be doing one. There's going to be a new case study in Vermont. If you do want to do one of these, though, you need to do it before, because the project ends next year. So yeah, it's not technically on the list because even though there's only a year left in the project, it's new. But yeah, so that brings me to why I'm presenting this today, because we're trying to understand, the whole point is that you're comparing and contrasting different case studies in terms of agroecological transition, right? So you're trying to figure out, where they're at. But if you're trying to further the agroecological transition, you need to understand what you're working with, right? You can't just be So we're trying to understand different data points to try and do some analysis. So, to understand what's going on, the public policies, how has this shaped the agroecological transition in both the past and the present, important historical events, and agroecological initiatives. So that's like farms, nonprofits, but concrete businesses and initiatives. So in order to do that and kind of make it more digestible, we were basically tasked to make a timeline. So, with these components to understand the different, types, to be able to compare and contrast easily from one case study to the other. So this, for example, is the Wales case study. So it has, all the initiatives, the gray boxes, and this comes into play in a minute, so this isn't coming out of nowhere. But we have the public policies, the trends, and up top we have, like historical events that might have impacted the agroecological transition, such as COVID-19, for instance. So we are putting together, this is our timeline right now. As you can see, there's some gaps. So the main idea behind this seminar is to ask people about some of the data points that we have collected and ask to see if there are additions or inputs, especially in terms of trends. Like, where do you think Coventry is right now in terms of the agroecological transitions? We have our initiatives, we have, some trends and policies, and we have our historical events. The red spiky ones are crises specifically, such as foot and mouth disease, and this is also a different one for France. So our first exercise, right, is to put together, we're going to go through and read these 3 slides, which breaks down the different components that I told you before. So initiatives, public policies, and historical events. And then we're gonna show, we've put together a spreadsheet, and we're gonna ask, for your inputs and or fact checking on that spreadsheet, and see and also start to think about what patterns you notice. So looking at it. So, right, I think that's it. So I'm gonna start a timer, and I'll just go through one by one. Originally, I was thinking about reading it aloud, but I was like, no. You guys can just follow along and read. So again, these are agroecological initiatives in the general area. So again, we're talking about Coventry's agroecological transition. So I mean, obviously, no need to try and memorize it or anything, but familiarize yourself with the list and start to think oh, would I add something? Would I take something away? I'm gonna start a 1-minute timer now. As you can see, CAWR is on there. And mind you, this is, again, we're putting it on a timeline. So we're not trying to map, it's not like we're trying to map every single one, but just the relevant ones. Like if you were trying to give an analysis or trend, like what sort of initiatives, farms, nonprofits, food banks, start to think who do I know? Who would I add? If I was someone not from Coventry and I wanted to understand Coventry's food system. Who's a good example of what agroecology means to Coventry?
Do you want us to say anything, or shall we continue?
Right, yeah, continue. Yeah, hold your questions for the moment, and then once we get through all 3 slides, we're basically throwing the same pieces of information at you in 3 different ways. First was the timeline, second is the slides, and then the Excel spreadsheet. So you have 3 different ways to think about it. Okay, great. That's the next one. So these are national, regional, and public policies that impacted the agroecological transition. I'm gonna break down a couple of these while we're reading. You may be wondering why we have the Brexit. So I learned this while doing this presentation, but in 2016 was when we had the Brexit referendum, but in 2020 was when the UK actually left the EU. So the Brexit referendum is a public policy, but the 2020 Brexit leaving the EU is like more like a historical event. And Margaret Thatcher was more about like privatization. All right. The last one, which has the least amount of data. I went from most dense to least dense. And yeah, so these are the historic events that impacted the agroecological transition in Coventry. So this is the one that actually has Brexit on there. And of course, COVID-19 and the Ukraine war as well. So yeah, I feel like this is the one that's the most fluid. Like I feel like there's a lot of different historical events that you can put here, but like I said, in the end it all has to fit on a timeline, so it can't be too much. All right. Thank you guys for hanging in with me there. So now we're going to split, this is the second exercise, so now we're going to switch to the Excel spreadsheet. So this is what we got, right? Obviously, we already have a bit of an extensive list. It actually even goes beyond this to like, I think there's like 40, we have like we have 45 different entries. So I color coded it. So we have green for the initiatives. We have red for the policies and blue for the events. So this is the part where I can open it up to you guys and start asking like, okay, in terms of initiatives, public policies, and historical events, what would you guys add, subtract? Did I have something wrong on there? Because mind you, I came to Coventry like a month ago and I did try to fact check, but if there's anything that seemed wrong, also please let me know.